Alice, how are you doing first and foremost, and how are your nerves holding up?
I am really, really nervous. I can't lie. We've obviously lost to Tottenham three times this season. I'm seeing obviously Newcastle won the Carabao, Palace won the FA Cup, and I think the Carabao meant that bit more to Newcastle, and the FA Cup meant that bit more to Palace. And I think while Man United desperately need this Europa League, I still think it's going to mean a bit more to Spurs because they need that trophy, whereas Man United just need it for the financial implications ahead of the transfer window having UCL football. So that worries me, like, oh, Tottenham going to be more up for it, and it means that a little bit more. Are they going to, and Ange, the way he's sort of bigging it up to the players, that's making me quite nervous.
Yeah.
We spoke to you the last time we played you, I think it was January or early February, just before we beat you 1-0. And we were talking about the possibility of us facing each other in the Europa League final, which seemed like a distant possibility back then. And now here we are. You said that if we both got to a final, you'd back Man United to win it. Do you still feel the same?
I think, like, in my heart, I have to back Man United in the final. We lost, I think, three times to Man City last season and beat them in the FA Cup final. We lost to Newcastle in the league twice and we beat them in the Carabao Cup final. So I think in my heart, I always have to back Man United. But there is a voice in my head saying, I think Spurs are going to do it because us against Premier League opposition, I know you actually below us in the Premier League, but we really struggle against Premier League opposition and the physicality side of things. And with Hoyland right now, it's like having 10 men. So I do have that fear in my head that Tottenham are going to do it. I think if Mickey van der Ven was out, my head would say Man United. But because you've got Romero and Mickey van der Ven, my head is a bit like Tottenham, but my heart has to back Man United in a final.
As a Man United fan, what do you take about the preparation going into this game? Because both managers have taken like the opposite approach. Amorim played pretty much his first team on Friday night. Ange rested 11 players from that second leg in Bogo. Ange is basically pretty much saying this is everything for Tottenham Hotspur. And Amorim is kind of like the opposite, saying, look, it doesn't matter. We've had a terrible season. And he's not putting too much pressure on his players going into this final. So as a Man United fan, what do you make out of that?
It's an interesting one because I think like almost a mix of both approaches would be the best, whereas Ange is really far one way, Amron's really far the other way, because I think Ange being like you can be on the wall, you can be known as the Tottenham team that won this European trophy, it's going to get Tottenham more hype for it. Whereas almost Amron's already given these Man United players an excuse, I feel like, if we don't win, in the sense of it doesn't matter if like Amron's saying things like if we don't win, maybe it's better if we don't have UCL football, maybe we can focus on the league. He's saying us winning the trophy, he doesn't like that. It could be used to cover up what we've done in the league, and the league form's more important. Whereas Ange is like, this is the trophy. And I think my one fear with that is Amorim giving the players an excuse? Is Tottenham going to be more up for it? But then I do also think that, I guess, mentality-wise, going into next season, it's maybe better to have somewhat that approach. But I think a mix of the two approaches would probably be best. And then with the resting, Ange has pretty much rested everybody for 2 weeks, whereas we've played our stronger squad the last two games. I think for me, I would have looked at resting a Casemiro, an Ahmad, a Bruno, and a Yoro. But other than that, I would have wanted all the other players to be fresh. So again, it's a mix of the two. I think Man United could start better than Tottenham and be more fresh and more intense because we played more. But Euro might miss the game, and Lindelof is not who Man United fans want to see starting in a cup final. But could Tottenham, if it goes to extra time, have the advantage with the extra rest? It's one of those where I think Man United might start better, but Tottenham might end better because of the rest and rotation.
In terms of Amorim himself, in what he's been saying in the lead up to the final, but in terms of just his general kind of rhetoric since he's come into the job, how honest he is. I think a lot of maybe Man United fans find it refreshing, but maybe is there a line where maybe he's crossing into being too honest in front of the media, just saying like he's kind of opens his heart out, it seems, every single press conference about how difficult this job is and how behind you are and how embarrassed he is in the position you are. And when you hear him speak, do you like his honest approach, like how he's talking, or do you think some things need to be kept behind closed doors?
I quite like his honest approach. I always have this thing with managers where, like, in private, you tell your players if they're crap, but in public, just back your players, confidence, all of that. But other than that, I like an honest approach in terms of him saying he's embarrassed, him taking the blame, because I think with Man United being the club the size that we are, we need that mentality to be like, look, 16th is a disgrace. It doesn't matter if we win the Europa League, it's an absolute disgrace. And I think because we came 8th last season and won the FA Cup, it covered the cracks a little bit. We kept Ten Hag, which has ended up costing us because we went and brought players for a back four. We're now playing a back five. I think we learned from last year that we just because we won the FA Cup didn't, change the fact that last season was awful. And we're only in the Europa League because we won the FA Cup, which is mad to think.
It is mad to think. But the thing that worries me is that Tottenham have obviously not got over the line for a very long time, since 2008, since the Carabao Cup. Manchester United, even in their worst kind of era, they seem to get over the line year after year. Last year, the FA Cup, the year before, the Carabao Cup. So is there something about you that just thinks like, you know what, United know how to handle these situations?
Yeah, I think when you've got players like Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes, you sometimes back United in those moments because sometimes in finals it's not about the best team, it's about who can produce on that moment. Like the amount of times Real Madrid have been rubbish, but then they've won a game in the
Yeah.
Champions League. Bellingham's delivered. With Man United, Casemiro, the second half of the season has been really good for us, actually. Like, he looked finished in January, and these last 3 months, he's just been like Champions League Casemiro. Bruno Fernandes is obviously probably going to be the best player on the pitch in that game. And I think, while I think Tottenham almost have the better team, and if you do combine 11s, there's only three Man United players that are really getting in the combined 11s in Casemiro, Bruno, and Ahmad when people are doing the combined 11s. I do think sometimes if there's a moment it could be a Bruno ball and Maguire or Casemiro get a head on it, or a Bruno goal or an Ahmad goal. Was I think if you're missing Kulusevski and Maddison, they're probably the two players that are most likely to pop up for you in that moment. Maybe Son. Solanke loves a goal against United, so I think in the sense of sometimes Tottenham could be the better team, but maybe we've got more players to just deliver in that moment to get the win, and sometimes that's what trophies is about.
Have you seen it like in the lead up to the final and in maybe the last few games? In terms of, obviously the results haven't quite been there for United, but they have obviously done quite well in Europe. But have you seen any improvement? Are there any green shoots you're looking at in how United are playing to suggest maybe he's starting to, things are starting to improve under Amorim?
I do genuinely believe if we get a good number 9 in, we will be much better next season. Because unlike Ten Hag, we're not conceding 20 shots a game. We're not as open. Like when you played us and Ten Hag was in charge, you battered us 3-0. And I know Bruno got sent off, but you still were battering us when Bruno was on the pitch. You could have won that game 4-5-0. Whereas I think under Amorim, the games have been a lot closer. Was it the FA Cup or Carabao Cup game? Was just a game.
Yeah.
Carabao, yeah.
The game of mistakes from Bayindir and Fraser Forster. So that one's kind of a little bit. But I thought the 1-0 was a lot closer. But obviously, you didn't have your best back line, but we didn't have anybody on the bench. We didn't make any subs other than Chido, the 17-year-old, for 5 minutes at the end. So it's a weird one to sort of know what's going to happen. But I think we have improved under Amorim, just not going forward. Like I think we're better in defence and we're better in midfield. But I don't know if you watched Højlund versus Chelsea. He gave the ball away more times than he made passes. It's kind of like having 10 men on the pitch. Like if you compare Højlund and Solanke, what they're going to offer, and that's the frustration because I think had Xerxes been fit, we would have 100% started him because I feel for Højlund, but it's like having 10 men on the pitch. And I think while we have improved lots of elements going forward, it's nothing. And I think with your best back line and us not being able to score goals, even though we were better than Chelsea for a good 65 minutes of that match, we can't score unless we're putting a ball to Maguire in the box or a ball to Casemiro in the box or Bruno or Ahmad score a worldie. Like you look at all our goals, it's outside the box or set pieces. We very rarely score a goal where it's a good bit of work and a tapping at the back post, which is what Brennan Johnson does or Tottenham do more. That's the worry.
Obviously, there's a narrative forming within the Spurs fan base maybe a bit that this means a lot more to Spurs than what it does maybe to Manchester United. So with you obviously being a Man United fan, what do you reckon the narrative is with the people that you speak to? How big is this for Man United fans? Because I've heard that there's going to be a lot more Spurs fans in Bilbao than there'll be Manchester United fans. And obviously there's a lot more Man United fans in the world than there is Tottenham fans. So it's just a weird one. So what's the kind of feeling in the Man United fan base at the moment?
I think it means a lot for both teams. Both teams need to win this because whoever doesn't win this is the loser of this season in a sense. For Man United, obviously we've won 2 trophies in the last 2 years, so we don't have that trophy drought or that need for a trophy. But for Man United, we're just financially skint. I mean, you probably read all the stories about Ineos not paying for this and Ineos and Sir Jim cutting this and cutting that. So for Man United, it's more we need to do a lot in the transfer window, and I think getting Champions League football would give us £85 million more to spend, which is two good signings. And also, it means it's just going to help us attract players. Same with Tottenham, it's going to help both teams attract players as well if you don't get Europe. So for Man United, we just need it in the sense of Amrin needs a rebuild. We need to spend a lot of money to sort out this squad because it's atrocious. And without Champions League football, that's going to be harder, and that could set us back a year or two. So it means a lot for United, but it definitely means a lot more for Tottenham because you haven't won a trophy in so long. And I think as well, Amarin knows if he loses, he's still safe, whereas Ange knows if he loses, he's sacked. And even if he wins, he might be sacked. I think, Tottenham, it means more to Ange. I think it means more to Tottenham and more to Tottenham fans. But it still means a lot to United in terms of future. But I think United is more financially motivated, whereas Tottenham is like, this is a trophy that I don't know if you've won it before.
Yeah, we've won it twice before in 84 and 72. So it's been a long time coming.
A long time, yeah.
A long time coming. So it's time for it to happen again. But there's been this kind of, I don't even know what you call it, but Keys, Gray, Arsene Wenger, they're all kind of coming out and saying that if Spurs or Man United are playing Champions League football next year off the back of getting through the back door and winning the Europa League, it's an absolute disgrace. And I'm sitting there thinking like, we've literally won a European. One of us is going to win a European competition. Yeah, we've had a bad league season, but that has no bearing on doing well in Europe. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those really where I think if it wasn't Man United and Tottenham and it was, a West Ham, nobody would care. It's because it's Man
Yeah.
United and Tottenham. And I think I read something that like 4 out of the last 5 Europa League winners wouldn't have got Champions League football without winning the Europa League. Sevilla, when they won it, they were 12th in
Yeah.
the Liga. No one's picking out fast. I think Villarreal, when they beat Man United in the final, was 7th or 8th. I think Atalanta came 5th last year, although I think they would have actually got in the Champions League through 5th anyway. So I think it's one of those where, it's because it's Man United and Tottenham, and particularly Man United is just so hated. But I think as well, like Tottenham as well, disliked by Arsenal fans, particularly, Arsene Wenger there. It's like, I think if it was West Ham or Wolves, I don't think we'd have the same convo. And I think people don't realise that, like, imagine if you took away Europa League from winning the FA Cup and Champions League through winning the Europa League, those trophies would mean less. You already see sometimes in the FA Cup the bigger teams rest, players and that and don't take it as seriously. I think the reason people will take the FA Cup and Europa League so seriously is because it's an opportunity to get into Europe. And
Yeah.
for Man United and Tottenham, the expectation is to challenge for Champions League, but it's an opportunity for clubs that wouldn't normally get Champions League football to get there. Same with obviously the FA Cup, and the people complaining that Man United won the FA Cup last year and got Europa League football through that. But it's like what makes those competitions better is knowing you get Champions League football on top of a trophy, because I think that makes people take it more seriously. Like we won it, I think 5-6 years ago under Mourinho, and we got Champions League football because of that. We wouldn't otherwise. So to say you shouldn't get Champions League football, I think it makes the trophy less meaningful. I think that's what makes people take it seriously, and that's what puts more on the line and makes it more exciting as a fan.
Yeah, I
100%.
agree.
You said just before, whether Amorim wins it or not, you think he is safe. But if he does lose this final, not to say he's going to be sacked because due to like performance, but like, do you worry for his long-term future at Man United just because of how bad you've been with the current set of players, and you laid out how difficult it's going to be to like improve on that without this like money coming through in the summer through like winning this competition. So like, if you lose this, is it not looking good for Amorim, do you think, next season?
It's definitely would put the pressure on. Like, I think he's one of those where he's going to get a transfer window, and if we're really crap by Christmas time, he could go. Like, it's one of those, but I think they'd give him till Christmas time. But if it's really crap, he could go because, look, I don't think it's totally Amarin's fault. We were 14th when Ten Hag got sacked. Our underlying numbers last season when we finished 8th would have put us 14th. We're now 16th. The squad isn't great. We're now playing, a back 5, and we brought a squad for a back 4. But Amarin, I think, has come in. He's won 6 games in the league and lost 14. It's atrocious. The only team we've beat in 2025 that will be in the Premier League next season is Fulham, because the other teams we beat in 2025 were Ipswich, Southampton, Leicester. We've lost to West Ham, we've lost to Tottenham. When we beat City, that was 2024. When we beat Everton, it's 2024. We've not won back-to-back league games all season. We've been atrocious in the Premier League. And while, it was poor under Ten Hag, it's still been poor under Amarin. But he lost Rashford who, you know, I know he wasn't having the best season at United, but Rashford is our best goal scorer in this. Like, he would start up front over Højlund if he was still here in the final, and Rashford's not striker. You know, Anthony, he probably needed to go on loan, which is good, but we lost him. We didn't replace those two. We never replaced Sancho when he went out on loan. You know, Ahmad then got injured for 4 months. Xerxes now injured. So our only attackers we've got is Højlund and Garnacho for the last 6 weeks. Ahmad's just come back. And I do go, well, to be fair to Amarin, defensively we're fine. The problem is scoring goals. And look, you know, Garnacho I think's been all right. I think he gets way too much stick. But it's like the squad we got is atrocious, but Amarin needs to do better. And I think it's very much a case of we're going to back him in the summer. You give him the striker, you give him another attacking player, a midfielder that can progress the ball, and let's see what happens by December. But I think the pressure will be on, and I think fans will turn on him if we lose the Europa because they'll be fed up because it has been really bad since he's come in.
What's your feelings towards Ange? Because I know you were a big backer of Ange Postecoglou at one point in the season, but if he does go and win this final now, do you think he's done enough to keep his job for next season?
It's a difficult one because I was a big backer of Ten Hag. He won the trophy, stayed, didn't work well. I think with Ange, I backed him until we started to get players back from injury, and you were still bad. Because the reason because I know when you've got Van de Ven and Romero fit, and your best back four, and you were good at the beginning of the season, you were good at the beginning of last season, which is sort of why I backed Ange. Whereas I know that he's not really been playing them so much in the Premier League, but I think for Tottenham, it depends on what manager's available and wants to come to Tottenham in the summer. Like, if you're in a position where Thomas Frank, you know, will come to Tottenham in the summer, if you sack Ange, then even if you win the Europa League, I'd sack Ange. But if you're in a position where it's Southgate that's going to come in, then I would keep Ange, if that makes sense. It depends on who is available and if they're better. Because Ange, you know, potentially this winning Europa League and he stays at Tottenham could kick him on, could get the player belief. Finally, Levy might give him some backing and you have more luck with injuries and you could be in a much better place. But I think with what happened with Ten Hag in the FA Cup, I'd probably say sack him if there's a good replacement like a Thomas Frank out there.
Do you think those two situations are very comparable then, like Ten Hag last season and Ange this season in terms of the trophy? Because he's saying it's completely different, Ange.
To an extent, because I think with Tottenham, they've been really bad in the league, and Man United were really bad in the league. Not quite, we were 8th last season, which isn't quite as bad as 17th. And I think winning the trophy as a fan, it makes you forget about how bad the season was because you've got Europa League football, you've got European football, who cares? That you almost forget how bad last season was. And I think it papers over the cracks in that sense. And I think, you know, Ange will obviously say it's different because he wants to protect himself and wants to protect his job. And obviously that's why he's taking Europa League very seriously because I think he knows he has to win to protect his job. But I think it is quite similar.
Well, it's different in a sense that for United, it's not unusual, you know, like, for example, Van Gaal, he won the FA Cup and got sacked a few days later because you weren't happy with his management. So, like, it's not unusual for a club like Man United to have a poor season but still come away with a trophy. Whereas at Tottenham, we haven't won a trophy in 16 years. We haven't had a European trophy in 40 years. Like, on that basis, like, winning a trophy at this club is just a lot harder than doing it at Man United. 100%. So when it comes to, like, the situations, like, in terms of judging the level of performance, you could say for Ten Hag, like, winning a trophy papers over the crack of how poor it is because it's not unusual to do that at Man United. But for Tottenham, like, winning a trophy is literally what the club is, like, aiming to do, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
so that situation's a bit different, I would say.
Yeah, 100% get you. I mean, it's up to really those at Tottenham to make the decision because it's like winning a trophy's amazing, and I think a lot of Tottenham fans would want Ange to stay if he wins a trophy because you haven't won one in so long. But I think Tottenham also have to look ahead at next season and say he's won the trophy. That's fantastic. What a fantastic thing. But can we rely on him to bring form in the Premier League next season? And look, I like Ange and I wanted him to succeed at Tottenham. But I think it would be a risk to stick with him. But at the same time, like, it could definitely work because you've seen how good you can be when everybody is fit and how he gets the best out of young players.
Yeah, I bet you don't want him to succeed anymore because that means winning this trophy on Wednesday. But there is a few kind of omens coming into it a little bit. There's the ones with the trophy drought, Newcastle, Crystal Palace. I think Bologna as well hadn't won a trophy in 50 years. There's so many around Europe. I think there's a cup final next week in Germany where Stuttgart play a team from the division below where they haven't won a trophy in God knows how long. But then you've got the player ones as well where Casemiro, I think, has never lost in a final. Coutinho Romero has never lost in a final. And Andre Onana, I believe, has never won a final. So, I mean, it's a strange one, isn't it?
It's a weird one as well. And I also read a stat that the last time Man City went trophyless in a season, Man United won the Europa League. And I was like, well, and we had all the injuries in defence last time we won the Europa League. And now we've got our three best centre-backs injured. So there's loads of like little things like signalling Tottenham could win. But then there's loads of little things going, oh, it could be Man United's year because Ahmad lost the Europa League final at Rangers. Bruno Fernandes lost the Europa League final, 4 years ago with Oli in that awful penalty shootout. And if this game goes to penalties, I will not watch the penalties. I cannot do with penalties in the Europa League final game. That's all I'm saying. Not penalties. Please be done in the game. But there's so many little signs. But it's going to be... The thing is, I can't predict it. If I'm going to be totally honest, I honestly can't predict it.
Yeah, have you ever remembered a final this kind of on a knife edge? Because like this game is literally 50-50. I don't think there's a favourite going into this.
No, like I feel like a lot of people would say Tottenham, if you look at the combined 11s, have the better team, but then a lot of people are like, I guess Man United, with their history, they have to be the favourites. But then I'm sitting there thinking like, I guess with Man United in history and the expectation of the club, we might be slight favourites, but we're both just as rubbish. Like there's not a clear favourite. And it's like United, yes, they turn up in finals, but Tottenham are beating us this season. We're both just as rubbish. It's like you can't pick a favourite. It's not like... when there's been other finals and you're like, well, that team's obviously a lot better than that team, like let's say if Newcastle were in this position, not Man United, everyone would be saying, well, Newcastle will probably beat Tottenham in the final. Whereas everyone's like, well, they're both rubbish, but maybe we back Man United because they win trophies, but they haven't beaten Tottenham under Ange at all. So there's no favourite really.
Is there any selection headaches for Amorim ahead of this, or do you pretty much know the lineup, do you think?
I think the lineup will be the exact same lineup that started versus Chelsea, but there is some reports that Dalot and Yoro are borderline. It's like they might be able to play, but Amorim's got to take that risk to go. Like if the Europa League was in 2 weeks, they would play, but they're returning to garage training. Obviously, Dalot's been out for a lot longer than Yoro. Yoro's been out for 2 weeks. So it's one of those because for me, I would much rather see Yoro than Lindelof. And I think like Yoro and Dalot would both start if they're fully fit. That's the big question is, how much of a risk is it to play Yoro and Dalot knowing that they probably need a couple more days, but just could play if need be? That's going to be the headache. But other than that, it'll probably be the same squad versus Chelsea.
And I guess like the Tottenham headache, I think the team pretty much picked itself apart from one position, which is the 10, with Maddison out, Kulusevski out, which could impact the 9 as well. I mean, who do you think plays there? I know you follow Spurs a lot, so you might have an opinion on it. So, I mean, in my opinion, I think Solanke should play just off Richarlison. But I guess we don't have too many options. Could Son play there? Could Tell play there? Odegaard?
Yeah, it's so difficult to predict because I think Odegaard has played there before, but then I thought he didn't play Richarlison in the game versus Villa, which says to me he's going to play both Richarlison and Solanke. So I'm assuming he's going to have Richarlison, Solanke with probably Brennan and Son out wide.
Yeah.
I think that's what he's going to do, but I don't know really. It would be a difficult one to predict because I thought maybe he could try Sarr there, but I think he got an injury and he's not a 10 either really, And I don't think...
Does that worry you, the thought of having Solanke and Richarlison on the pitch together, two kind of aerial threats to aim at in the box? Is that something that concerns you?
Definitely if Lindelof plays, because we call him Lindesoft, and even though De Gea got a lot of fault for the last Europa League final, like the goal we conceded was Lindelof not winning headers. So like when you've got Maguire, it's all right, but when you've got Lindelof, you're a bit like, So I think that would definitely, and the thing that worries me the most is pace, because our back three will be Luke Shaw, Lindelof, Maguire if we can't have Euro back, and there's no pace. That's more what worries me. I think Maguire is fine. But yeah, I think if they target Lindelof and set pieces we're atrocious at, that's probably the biggest worry, set pieces.
So Alice, not long till the big day. How do you see it panning out, and what's your score prediction?
Oh, I've got two scenarios in my head. I've got like my heart and my head. My head goes, oh, Man United going to score a goal because we can't score. And could Tottenham nick it? Brennan Johnson on the back post, just a jammy goal kind of thing. my part of my head thinks Tottenham could nick this 1-0 and part the bus and Brennan Johnson jammy goal. But then my heart goes, Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro are going to do something. And it's going to be like, I think Tottenham will score. We very rarely keep clean sheets. But for some reason, we might get a penalty through something. Bruno's going to put it away. Casemiro's going to score a header. My heart says 2-1 United. My head says 1-0 Spurs.
Well, let's hope your head's right. And when you look at Spurs, when you look at Spurs in the 2 away legs in the quarterfinals and the semi-final, where we didn't do stylistically Ange ball, we sat deep, we waited for our moments, we were defensively solid. Surely that's got to worry you going into this game.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we don't score goals, and if you're defensively solid, we almost need you to make a mistake to capitalize on it. Because when we score, it's outside the box or set pieces, so we almost need you to make a mistake. And I feel like when you've got your best back line, you're less likely to make a mistake. So it definitely worries me. Like, United have been very good in the Europa League, but the Lyon game was 8 minutes of us showing up and saving it. The Bilbao game, they got the red card. So while I think Lyon and Bilbao were, Bilbao particularly were the favourites, probably tougher opposition than Bodo Glimt, it's like we just had that moment and luck. Whereas I feel like Tottenham, you went and beat Frankfurt and you did the job in Bodo with a few players out. So that's why I'm worried. Like, some Man United fans are quite confident. They're like, it's Tottenham, and I won't win a trophy. But I'm like, look, like, we've got to be realistic about how crap Man United are. Yeah. Like, we have to be realistic about it. So I am worried.
Yeah, it's like the El Crapico, isn't it, going into this game? That's literally what it is. But Alice, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I'm not going to wish you luck for Wednesday, but let's hope your nerves just hold up. But everyone doing to go subscribe. Alice Talks Football, some brilliant football content on there, as well as some great Spurs content. But Alice, yeah, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me on. Come on, United.
Big